I'm Mark Madary, Councilman from District A, St. Bernard Parish, and you have my permission to film.
Okay, and do I have permission to post this on the internet,
Yeah,
or give it to
post it on the internet?
Give it to CNN or other news programs? Okay.
Well, most of the people have been waiting patiently for the road home. I think it's getting to a critical junction now because it's 2 years out from a storm.
Right.
They haven't received, well, they've had a promise, and the promise hasn't been delivered. And I think that's where the frustration sets in. They no longer feel like they want it. They no longer feel like there's an urgency in taking care of them. In the meantime, people have tried to put their life back together in a 31-foot trailer where there's a family of 4 living in a 31-foot trailer, which is not a situation that you can help build a strong family background.
So how many people are back, what percentage is back now, 2 years later?
2 years later in St. Bernard Parish, we stand at roughly 28,000 to 29,000 people with a pre-Katrina number of 67,000. So we had roughly a third to 35% of our population is back now.
And the biggest obstacles for people coming back, what are they?
It's the obstructions of government and provide the assistance that was promised so people can make a realistic decision on whether this is a community that they can rebuild in or whether it's something that they have to go forward and find another place.
So what about, this is what I think people in the rest of the country don't understand. All that money that Congress supposed to have allocated for survivors of Katrina.
There's been $116 billion allocated to the storm.
Right.
I would like to know whose checking account the money's in. It has not filtered to local government. The state government supposedly is holding some. The rest of it, they said, it's for the state to ask the federal government for. So whoever's not asking, please do so, because you can see in most people's cases they have not moved forward with their life because they have not received the assistance that was promised.
Okay. The other thing I wanted to ask you about was the difference in the national news coverage of New Orleans area compared to St. Bernard Parish. St. Bernard Parish, it's about 500 square miles?
It's about 500 square miles. St. Bernard Parish, population-wise, was maybe 1/5 of what Orleans was, or 20% of what the city of New Orleans was. And as a result, you're not going to get the national news coverage that you've gotten from it. Okay. However, the amount of devastation in St. Bernard is that you're talking about a total parish, predominantly because of levee failure from the Corps of Engineers' inability to build the levee system that could protect us. And it was built shoddy and at less than the height that they were instructed to build. Right. That the whole parish went underwater as a result of the storm. I did never expect the media coverage to be the same, but you know, I watch people go to small communities in the Midwest when there's a tornado. Right. And I see that they get coverage when it's one small community, maybe of 1,000 to 3,000 people. Right. And this is a community of 67,000 people that everyone lost their home. Usually in a tornado, some homes, some properties have been destroyed, right, but there's others standing. Right. Here, every home was flooded. Right.
And that's what I noticed when I'm at home in California. I see lots of, especially originally the first 6 months or so after right, Katrina, lots of coverage of New Orleans, which was good. Right. I wanted New Orleans to get that, but not.
No, and New Orleans needs it too. I mean, right, we joined at the hip. What I find amazing is that the break is less than 2 miles from where I'm standing. Right. Yet they think the water stopped somewhere in the 9th Ward and didn't come into St. Bernard Parish. Right. But the same body of water that flooded the lower 9th Ward where you saw the massive break in the levee is that same body of water that flooded this community also. Right. I was here in the first spring after Katrina. I was at the Adullam Christian Fellowship Center where they had a relief center. Right. And we were there on a Sunday, and the relief center was closed because they needed 7 volunteers to run it, and they didn't have 7 volunteers to run it, and that was for St. Bernard Parish. Right. When I got home from that trip, I saw Anderson Cooper on CNN in the 9th Ward saying it was either 3,000 or 4,000 volunteers that had come out during spring break to help in the 9th Ward. Right. And the source of frustration for me, and I'm sure for people living here too, is
how big is the 9th Ward? About 2 square miles?
About 2 square miles.
And St. Bernard Parish is how many square miles?
It's 500 square miles.
And it's right next door to the 9th Ward?
It immediately abuts.
And it has the exact same level of devastation as the 9th Ward?
Absolutely.
And for the first spring break after Katrina, you didn't have 7 volunteers to run the relief center.
Right.
But a block away in the 9th Ward, there were 3,000 to 4,000 volunteers.
4,000 volunteers.
For an area about 2 to 3 square miles.
And look, I'm happy for any volunteer that comes.
Right.
And without volunteers, this community would be nowhere nearly along the road that we have.
Right.
You know, I see tremendous improvement because I haven't left since the storm.
Right.
So, you know, when I get one person moving back in, it's a cause for celebration.
Right. Oh, yeah.
When you get one house restored, it's a cause for celebration.
Right.
Waiting for the government's not going to answer the call. Matter of fact, the government has an amazing ability of taking $10 and reducing it to $1.
Right.
Where the private sector would like to have $1 and multiply it into 10. So it's just the nature of government is that they're not result oriented. Right. And it hadn't been for the heart and the soul of people from across the United States wanting to help, nothing would be possible.
What about this house behind you that has the big X on it?
The X means that they haven't done enough to meet minimum housing standards as of this time, that it's set for demolition by condemnation, that they'll have a period of time that they have to bring it into compliance. If not, we'll set it for demolition.
Now, if there were volunteers that could help with this house,
this house could be saved. Neighborhood. So, you know, they had a real strong sense of community. People, they live here, and they spend most of their life here. It's something that they've called home, and I guess it's a feeling that people have and a connection that they have to the community that they grew up in.
Now, aren't there also a lot of extended families from St. Bernard Parish?
What happens is when you lived here and you go house shopping maybe somewhere else because you're building your own family, you see the value in the things that you've looked for in other neighborhoods. You just economically couldn't afford it in most other places in the metro area, and it made St. Bernard still the first place of choice for these people to call home.
So there are a lot of people who not only lost their home, but also
their whole family,
their brothers and sisters.
I come from a large family. I'm the second of 12 children, and 7 of us still lived in St. Bernard Parish.
And everybody's house was hit, or
everybody's house was hit.
Wow. So do you know how many relatives total were in St. Bernard when the flood hit?
I'd have to sit and start counting it, and I'd take the rest to get family. But I mean, at least half my family was still residing in St. Bernard.
Wow. And that's true for a lot of people here, right?
That's most people. That's most people. I mean, it's part of home, and you know, we don't venture far from home. Most of my brothers and sisters, first house that they purchased was within a mile of my mother and father's house.
Wow.
You know, that's the closeness of the families that we're here. This was my family home pre-storm.
So this was the house you lived in when the flood came?
When the flood came, this was the house.
This block, about how many families do you think are back, do you know? Just roughly?
We have maybe 15%.
About 15%. And is that's typical in a lot of the neighborhoods in St. Bernard?
Areas in the harder hit areas where the families were older, the homes were older, that's roughly what you have back. You get into the newer subdivisions where I subsequently have purchased a home. So I'm still waiting on road home money for this home that I do intend to repair and fix and make it viable.
Okay, wait, so you're one of the parish councilmen and you're still waiting on your road home money?
I have not received my road home.
2 years after Katrina?
2 years after Katrina. They didn't let me go to the front of the line and get together extra. But it's an indication that we fought with, there was a tree from my backyard that wound up on the roof. I had to fight with my insurance company as to the amount of damage that was caused by the tree and the amount of damage that was caused by flood water. And it was an ongoing battle, and that took a year to come to conclusion. So, you know, there's been a fight with insurance companies, there's been a fight with government agencies, and without volunteers, there's very few people that actually came to help. Most of them came to help themselves or enrich themselves off our measure.